the guts of 10 lengths to make up a joystick and a tip for gold in that run at Nace, but he was never really travelling at all that day.
8 runners over 2.5 miles, the graded Paddy suspended ceilings Novice hurdle. It is Wingman on the inside disputing the lead with the grey joystick, break of a length and a half to Eastern Legend, who races in company with Ballygunner Castle. On the inside is Mr. Percy, right with them. Scalp Nagoon, You Ought to Know, and Flood in the Park is just trailing the field. Continuing on to flight number 2 before the straight, little between Wingman and Joystick went out from the rail, followed by an improving Scalp Nagoon. Then Mr. Percy, Ballygunner Castle, You Ought to Know. And then Flood in the Park, and knocked back to the end is Eastern Legend. Flight number 2 before the straight. Wingman fiddled it. Is attended by Joystick. And then comes Scalp Nagoon, Ballygunner Castle, You Ought to Know, and Mr. Percy with the final couple. Turning into flights 3 and 4, Flood in the Park and Eastern Legend. Straightening for the next 2. And it is Wingman, the red cap, just with the edge from Joystick, followed by Ballygunner Castle. After the stable companions, Mr. Percy, Scalp Nagoon, and to the outside, You Ought to Know. Was followed by Flood in the Park and Eastern Legend. Joystick blundered at the 3rd flight. On to the 4th. Last one next time. It's Wingman. Into it, another mistake by Joystick as they come towards the winning post with the circuit to race. The Paddy suspended ceilings Novice hurdle. It's Wingman by a length and a half. Under Denny Gilligan from Ballygunner Castle, Rachel Blackmore. Just second from Joystick and Danny Mullins. Together 4 and 5, Scalp Nagoon, Sam Ewing, and in by the rail Mr. Percy and JJ Slevin. And then You Ought to Know, Sean O'Keefe, was followed by Flood in the Park, Keen Quirk, and Eastern Legend, Keith Donoghue. Going to flight number 5, 1 of 2 on the uphill past the stands. Wingman jumped it well, followed by Ballygunner Castle, then Joystick, Mr. Percy, Scalp Nagoon, and You Ought to Know, Flood in the Park, and Eastern Legend. Over the next, far from fluent, the one in front. Wingman heads up to the top of the track, pursued by Ballygunner Castle, Joystick, Mr. Percy on the inside, edging a little bit closer. And then Scalp Nagoon, they continue well stacked up. Wingman by less than 2 lengths to Ballygunner Castle. Into 3rd goes Mr. Percy, then Joystick, Scalp Nagoon, Flood in the Park, You Ought to Know, and ridden along at the back is Eastern Legend. Racing down towards the next flight. Wingman by less than 2 lengths to Ballygunner Castle and Mr. Percy. Joystick ridden away from that one and loses further ground as they've got another 4 flights left to jump. It is Wingman by a length and a half to Ballygunner Castle, then Mr. Percy, Flood in the Park into 4th, then Scalp Nagoon, Joystick, You Ought to Know, and Eastern Legend for the jump. And it is Wingman who's made most up to this point, followed by Ballygunner Castle within a length. 3 parts of a length back to Mr. Percy, who's right on their heels in 3rd, and Flood in the Park in touch in 4th. And then You Ought to Know, ridden along Scalp Nagoon, and then Eastern Legend. And falling right back is Joystick. 5 furlongs to go. 3 flights to jump. It is Wingman with a reduced advantage of a neck to a half length over Ballygunner Castle. Moving into a closing 3rd is Flood in the Park. Mr. Percy made a mistake, and then Eastern Legend, who's back up with the leading group. In touch, as You Ought to Know, gone away from Scalp Nagoon and Joystick. Turning in for the final 2 flights. Wingman with a slender advantage over Flood in the Park and Ballygunner Castle. The 3 are abreast. A length in front of Mr. Percy, then You Ought to Know on the outside of Eastern Legend. Coming towards the second last, Ballygunner Castle joined by Flood in the Park. Roused up on the outside, You Ought to Know. Tracking to the inside is Mr. Percy, the Eastern Legend. Wingman has stopped quickly over the second last. Flood in the Park and Ballygunner Gassel. They battle on ahead of Mr. Percy and You Ought to Know, coming towards the final flight. Mr. Percy from Flood in the Park and coming at them on the outside, albeit after a slight mistake. Mr. Percy on the run in. It's Flood in the Park from Mr. Percy, who's getting up on the near side, and Mr. Percy with a well-judged ride under J.J. Slevin runs down at the line, Flood in the Park and Ballygunner Castle.
Yes, a race to change complexion on a couple of occasions. Gone the way of Mr. Percy. Cheek pieces on for the first time. And, of course, after finishing mid-div at Leopardstown over